your WESN News on the Hour. I'm Naomi McNish. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Trump invites the TNT Prime Minister to the Florida summit. Venezuela rejects Prime Minister's CARICOM remarks on Cuba and Venezuela. The opposition questions the government's handling of the failed ZOSO bill. And internationally, US and Iran continue high-stakes indirect talks in Geneva. Now for the details. Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar says she has been invited by Donald Trump to attend a leaders' summit in Florida on March 7th. The Prime Minister disclosed the invitation after meeting U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio on the margins of the Caribbean Community Heads of Government meeting in St. Kitts and Nevis. Persad-Bissessar said discussions with Rubio focused on regional security, including Haiti, Cuba, and Venezuela, as well as energy cooperation. The Prime Minister also said the United States has agreed to support Trinidad and Tobago's search for partners to help reopen the former Petrochem refinery. She said several expressions of interest have already been received. Following the meeting, Rubio posted on social media praising TNT's cooperation in countering drug trafficking in the Southern Caribbean Sea. The government of Venezuela has rejected comments by Persad-Bissessar after she described Venezuela and Cuba as dictatorships during the CARICOM summit. Caracas said the remarks were inconsistent with the integration spirit of the Caribbean community and could damage bilateral relations. The Venezuelan response follows reports in regional media that the Prime Minister maintains a tense diplomatic relationship with Venezuelan officials. Political scientist Professor Hamid Ghani defended the Prime Minister's position, saying her criticism reflected strong leadership and regional democratic values. Opposition Senator Marvin Gonzalez is questioning whether the government allowed the proposed Zones of Special Operations legislation to fail in Parliament. Gonzalez suggested the administration may have expected the bill to collapse so it could later blame crime levels on the opposition. The government had argued that the legislation, supported by Minister of Homeland Security Roger Alexander, would have given security forces stronger powers in high crime areas. The bill required a special majority in the Senate, but failed to gain enough support after proposed amendments were rejected. The government maintains that the measure could have helped address rising violent crime. Internationally, indirect negotiations between the United States and Iran are continuing in Geneva in a bid to prevent military escalation. The talks are being mediated by Badir Abu Saidi. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi leads the Iranian delegation, while the U.S. team includes Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Presidential Advisor Jared Kushner. The negotiations come amid U.S. military deployments to the Middle East and threats by President Donald Trump to strike Iranian targets if a nuclear agreement is not reached. Iran insists it will not develop nuclear weapons, while the U.S. continues to push for stricter limits on uranium enrichment and regional security guarantees. Tensions remain high, with analysts warning that failure of the talks could trigger wider conflict in the region involving figures such as Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Well, that's news to the hour on WESN. I'm Naomi McNish. Thanks for watching.
WESN.
If you are a migrant currently living in Trinidad and Tobago without legal immigration status, this message is for you. The government of Trinidad and Tobago has introduced a special registration process for migrants who have overstayed or entered the country illegally. The online registration process will begin from Monday 26th of January and end on Wednesday 25th of February 2026. All applicants are first required to register through the official portal at migrantregistration.gov.tt. That's migrantregistration.gov.tt. After completing the online registration, there will be a mandatory in-person processing and verification which begins at the end of February 2026. The start date for that phase will be announced through official government channels. The in-person registration will take place at the Hazley Crawford Stadium, Port of Spain, the Atto Bolden Stadium in Balmain, Couva, and the Larry Gown Stadium in Malabar, Arima, as well as the Dwight York Stadium, Bacalet, Scarborough, Tobago. Applicants will undergo a comprehensive verification process which will include vetting by the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service involving fingerprinting and background checks. You will also be required to undergo basic medical screening. Upon completion of the registration process, successful applicants will be required to pay $700 for the migrant registration card. The ministry reminds undocumented migrants your participation in this exercise is essential, as failure to register during this window will result in deportation. This special registration process for migrants is your opportunity to be documented, protected, and allowed to work legally in Trinidad and Tobago for a defined period. For additional instructions, along with online application and required forms, visit the official portal at migrantregistration.gov.tt. That's migrantregistration.gov.tt. This message brought to you by the Ministry of Homeland Security and the Information Division, Office of the Prime Minister.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm not to do with that.
I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break the balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have 2. Lamar
Why? You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
let's go to the last part.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for. It's called loss and damage. And we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region.
Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. I mean, and Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada in spite of the obvious difference in size.
WESN.
One of the interesting dichotomies in life is how we view ethics and morality, because we really are not consistent. We aren't. When it comes to certain things, we could be very socialistic, and in other things we could be very capitalistic, and that's just in our individual personal lives. With your family, you could be socialistic. But then with most of the people that you meet, you could be very much drawing clear boundaries. What's mine is mine, what's yours is yours. Let's not mix. But then when you go up in scale, to what extent does our informal understanding of these things start to break down? Because the concepts essentially are the same. Then when you get to a national level, I mean, you could go local level, community level if you want, right? And generally speaking, at that level, we're still capitalists, individualistic in the vast majority of our mindset. This is my home, that's your home, right? I might pay taxes to fix your road, but this is not some socialist government where we all kind of pool our money to fix your road. We just pay taxes and let someone else do it. We don't expect taxes to be too high. We don't necessarily expect it to be too low. But then as you go up now at the national level, now more and more we want programs for help, because we view the government as being this never-ending money pit. And then as you go up further up the line, you want the authorities to be more and more helpful, to be more and more socialistic. Not fully understanding, the more you want them to do, the more they kind of tend to have to tax. Right now, New York City's budget, not just because of the recent mayor, but as a trend, an ongoing trend, has gone out of control, and various services like the spending on education per child and the spending for various services per citizen is far and away higher than other jurisdictions in the states. I think they said it might be twice as much as certain cities like in Minnesota. With all of the talk from CARICOM, there were a couple of things that kind of came out of it. Now, there's an article where Professor Hamid Ghani is speaking about the invitation from Trump and how he views it as a positive. But towards the end of it, at least in one of them, because there are two articles in the two daily newspapers that reference this, in the Express one, at least at the end, he makes 2 points that I think are somewhat lost on people in their everyday lives. One is, he questions the Prime Minister contrasting multi-party democracies and a one-party state. Why did people respond to it quite the way that they did? Because on some level, you might not necessarily like all of the implications of what the Prime Minister had to say, but was she wrong to say, would we choose to live that way? That's why I said, you know, to what extent do you have an ethical right to intervene? To what extent, ethically, are you right to not intervene? Those things are not as clear-cut as a lot of people want it to be. The fact of the matter is, it was highly appropriate to praise our multi-party systems of democracy that our countries enjoy in CARICOM, yet surprisingly some found that disturbing, which was itself disturbing. This is Professor Ghani. Now, I don't necessarily think it's disturbing, but you can see where it's fine to question, it's fine to debate the merits of what the Prime Minister said, but you could see where if it goes too far, then it could go to a place that might be disturbing. Now, Professor Ghani said, according to him, it was surprising, so I guess it was surprising to him, to discover that so many people were so supportive of left-wing ideology in the region when the track record of left-wing ideology in Guyana, Jamaica, and Grenada has or had been abysmally poor and caused great suffering to the populations of those CARICOM countries. The issue is, what is he referencing when he says left-wing ideology? Because our country is, to a significant degree, governed utilizing left-wing ideology. We don't utilize traditional right-wing ideological solutions. We don't have minimal taxes and small government and minimal social grants, social safety nets and the like. Minimal government programs, right? Obviously, police, fire, roads, street lights, these are things that you kind of have to do. But we have gates. That, to some extent, is more of a left-wing ideological approach to education, making as much of it free as possible. We have all of the various assistance programs. And then there is the approach to employment and how it is overdone. And generally speaking, the approach of politics in this country as in giving out goodies, but the goodies are not, well, we're going to do an infrastructure project and it's going to provide jobs. The goodies are, well, we just have some freeness to give out. Woo! In the States, housing is created by private contractors and firms and builders. New York and Los Angeles have a housing crisis in part because it's so overregulated. The private sector is de-incentivized from building houses. They have not yet looked to have the state make these houses or to try to make up the shortfall. But in TNT, we want the state to do it. We want the state to do almost everything beyond the things that it's self-evident they should be doing. And then we have an issue when we discover the inefficiencies of a state-run entity. Because technically, we are a capitalist economy. We're not a communist economy. We're not a socialist economy. We're a capitalist economy. And when you have a government now engaging the economy, and it's going to be concerned about the social implications of all of the various projects that it undertakes, why are we going to expect efficiency? The thing is, left-wing ideology is attractive because people want to assume a level of moral superiority. That's why college kids, they look at communism and socialism and they say, that's better than capitalism because the greedy capitalists, not understanding that in communist countries, there are greedy leaders who monopolize probably even a greater percentage of the wealth because they're monopolizing the nation's wealth when you get down to it, right? And they have even greater levels of power and influence and control when compared to business leaders and politicians in Western democracies. But they don't see that. They see the ills and the grass is always greener on the other side. And they think to themselves, well, no one ever, this is a common occurrence, no one ever properly instituted communism, not understanding that the failures of communism are not systemic failures, it's human failures. So you fall into that trap of the grass is always greener, and you want to change, you want something different, so it becomes enticing. So then all of a sudden, whoever practices it, they can't be that bad because they mean well. I mean, history is littered with the graves of the victims of people who mean well, or at least who claim to mean well. And the sad reality is the level of casualties, the number of victims for either of those things are not necessarily going to be that much different. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, but then on top of that, there are a lot of liars who lie about their intentions as well. So I guess it comes down to now, what are our political ideologies? Because that's one of the things I found very interesting. The professor says he's surprised people support left-wing ideology. Can you say what our political ideologies are in this country? We don't really fully understand it or grasp it. That's part of the reason why people tend to support it. Because there is a global narrative against capitalism, but the people who generally push that tend to understand very little about how real economics work and how real human feeling applies in all cases. That's why, ultimately speaking, most nations settle for some sort of balance. You have to have some amount of regulation and safeguards. You can't just leave it to market forces alone. That could be your starting point, but you do need to have mechanisms to ensure it doesn't go too far out of hand. The problem is when the mechanisms to prevent the system from being derailed themselves start to derail the system. Right now, the situation in Cuba is a difficult one for CARICOM because it seems as though at least certain regional leaders have recognized the fact that there is shifts in the geopolitical landscape. I guess part of the issue is we don't necessarily know exactly what it's going to change to and how far it's going to go. So now the question is, do you want to maybe go premature and commit to something that might end up being the wrong thing? Or do you want to take too long and then, as I've mentioned before, risk being on the outside looking in? It's almost like a dog-eat-dog world, and how do you survive in this very precarious environment? The thing is, it's not going to be something easy, which is why you want your best and brightest leading you, not the guys that won by default because they're not the other guys. And all politics tends to be that. We utilize left-wing ideology on both sides of the political aisle. So at what point, really, is it that both sides are earnestly competing with different ideas, as opposed to, generally speaking, just trying to do what they can to one-up each other, but don't really have much original thoughts? Shifting here slightly, there was a whole, well, not a whole, but an interesting situation happened where the Privy Council basically overturned a Court of Appeal ruling that itself overturned our High Court ruling that would have awarded a businessman damages from Philip Edward Alexander, currently Minister in the Ministry of Housing. So the Privy Council came back stating and touching on what I would argue to be a very key concept that I don't think fully understand how to practice in this country. And that's potentially part of the reason why the Privy Council said or is of the belief that our Court of Appeal panel was so wrong. The Privy Council rejected the Court of Appeal's reasoning that awarding full damages could undermine freedom of political speech. This is because they viewed the level of damages to be much less than the High Court's ruling, to paraphrase very oversimplistically. Quote, those rights do not protect speech that is malicious. The legitimate exercise of those rights is not impaired by awarding full compensation for injury to reputation and feelings in a liable case where malice has been proved. Allowing falsehoods to be published and spread with impunity poisons public discourse and undermines the conditions in which freedom of expression can flourish. And this is because Ms. Alexander basically said or threatened to bust files on Mr. Andrew Gabriel's alleged corruption. Lord George Legat noted that Alexander's threat to expose Gabriel for alleged corruption was defamatory despite being conditional. The fact that the threat was future and conditional does not affect the gravamen of the libel. A generalized allegation of criminality may be less damaging than a more detailed and specific one, but it is still defamatory. And it makes me think that on both sides of the issue, do we really fully understand what is freedom of expression and what is freedom of political speech in particular? And what's interesting is, can this be a sign of a precedent set that's, I would hope it would be a sign of pushback against some of the more outlandish and outrageous things said by our parliamentarians. One of the issues, however, is a fair amount of it is said in Parliament where there's parliamentary privilege. And we've reached the point where I believe too many people, at least the ones who are actively engaged in politics, don't actually care about the honorableness of Parliament, the professionalism of parliamentarians, the dignity of the Red House, of our nation. They are more concerned with winning, their side winning, whichever side it is. And we've said on the show multiple times, various people lament the fact that there was a time when things were not this bad. And now look at where we reached. And I was reminded of the Prime Minister's remarks that governments, the elected majority, needs to serve all of the people. But given how divisive the politics are, dare I ask, do people either actively supporting the PNM or presume to be supporters of the PNM, maybe because of where they live, or their race, or their religion, etc., etc.? Do they feel as though the government is working for them? When is the last time we've heard the slogan, everybody wins? Because when you get to a level of language that's that combative, can you really switch that off? Can you really then ensure that everybody who's supposed to be on your team, even if you are trying, can you ensure that they all are pulling in the same direction? Are willing to go with you? Dare I say, one of the things that I wonder coming out of CARICOM, particularly last year, is as much as we look at our politics being affected by racial division in this country, is regional politics also, to some degree, affected by racial and cultural division in this region? Now, let me wrap this up. Apparently, the AMA is looking at potential changes, amendments to the Environmental Management Act. One of the things is including noise management. as well as certain aspects of regulation and enforcement, right? And methodologies and coordination among agencies for that, including CTPS and regional corporations. Now the question is, to what extent is this just a pappy show? Or it starts off with good intentions, will it have the legs to follow through? Even if it doesn't fix everything, can it at least be a start, a precedent to fix some things? And one could argue some of the other issues with environmental management or environmental safety or protection might be overlooked because we don't necessarily feel any inconvenience directly day to day unless you live too close to a landfill or have an open sewer line in your community or something like that. Most of us, we're not necessarily going to experience some of the worst aspects of the environmental damage our nation inflicts upon its own geographical landscape. But noise pollution is very much something that is at the forefront for certain citizens. I'm not saying noise pollution should get less concern. I'm saying there's a chance that there are other things that are hidden dangers that are not getting enough concern. Regardless, you can't fault a certain level of demand for noise pollution to be fixed. But I fear that there will be a certain degree of inertia. Part of it is just the bureaucratic reality of making changes being very difficult for various minor reasons. But then the other part is who likes it so and doesn't want change. This is a chance for certain people to put their money where their mouth is. But on some level, because we don't necessarily know, and a lot of people don't care who the stakeholders and who the major players are in some of these instances. We know who the police are, but who is the EMA? And even if we did know, is there any way to kind of hold them to account if part of the reasons for the failures can be proven to be a lack of job performance? On some level, we don't really do that here. Think about it. We only deal with individuals, suspensions and firings and stuff when there's some political bubble or elections causes people to be swapped out. A couple of crime stories I want to get to before I close out the start of the show. The first two, there's a little bit of an irony. So on Tuesday afternoon, a 69-year-old Petty Valley man was in Barataria eating doubles. He got robbed of a gold chain valued $17,000. Now, there's a part of me that does not know why he cared to walk around with a gold chain in his day-to-day life like that, to the point where he's going to go and have roadside doubles wearing $17,000. To be honest, I don't think I've ever walked around with enough personal possessions to even come close to $17,000. And that's just screaming, take me. Because to a chain snatcher, if it's fake, you're not really losing anything by going after it. Well, in theory, except later that night, also in Barataria, there was a situation where two men attempted to rob someone of his cell phone, which ironically is valued less than the gold chain, only $3,000. Then apparently a white SUV approached the scene and ended up being police. And between the two police officers in the SUV and the victim, both perpetrators were apprehended. Kudos to the police. It makes me wonder if the police knew Barataria, there might be some pickpockets, chain snatchers, purse snatchers. You know, at least there was an incident. They could have even been trying to find the person that robbed the Petty Valley man of his gold chain and ended up stumbling into these two yahoos. Kudos to the police, because I think the last thing we want to see is somebody got robbed and in the same area somebody else got robbed. I know that kind of is an oversimplification in a way, right? You don't want the police to always just conduct the exercise of closing the door when the horse already bolted. But at the same time, you don't want it to be so easy as to say they'll just keep hitting the same spot over and over and you get no response. So kudos to the police. That said, there was another, and I don't speak about all the crime stories that are in the daily newspapers. But I just wanted to highlight those two things because the first one, why are you walking around with that gold chain? The second one, kudos to the police. Yes, there was a little bit of luck involved, being in the right place at the right time, but you know what? They stepped up, and it's not their fault. That is just the nature of the work, to be there in the moment. Yes, it takes a little bit of luck, but they stepped up when given the opportunity. That said, there is one crime story that left me cool this morning. Apparently, 42nd Street, Port of Spain, earlier this morning, 3 men were shot and killed with rifle fire. 1 a.m., 3 gunmen. I assume it was automatic rifles. Opened fire, 3 victims, all died on the scene. There isn't much details more with regards to this story. It's relatively fresh. And obviously, it's not as though a reporter would have been joining the spot as it happened. This is one of those bad signs. I'm not sure if all 3 men were intended victims, but the police say it is a targeted attack. Now, is it one of the 3 or all 3? I don't know. But the fact is there are 3 victims. This is how the murder goes out of control. When we have callous, reckless attacks utilizing weapons that could easily kill a large amount of people in a short space of time. I hope we're not getting back to that. The problem is we no longer have Uncle Sam to close the waterways in. So if there were any shortages before, we might end up now seeing a lot of pent-up resentment that has been bubbling over the last year, where the criminals were maybe laying low for the most part in a lot of ways, biding their time until the coast was clear. And now they're going to let it all out the system. And heaven help us if that is true. I hope I am not right. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll welcome our guests to close out the week. Stay tuned. This is Talking About the WSN, the Content Capital. Sean Michael Small. I'll be back after this.
Hi, I am Emiliana Beechan and I am a mental health and conflict resolution consultant. Welcome to Mind Matters, the show where we explore the intricate world of mental health and the art of conflict resolution. Join us as we hear from mental health professionals, conflict resolution experts, and everyday people who have transformed their lives through understanding and communication. Mind Matters, coming soon to WESN Content Capital.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
You are watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Just give an overview of what exactly is that split arrangement.
Now you don't need to register nothing. You don't need. We can do that another time. But then it becomes a hit, and then everybody starts to want to claim.
The laws that predate many of the independent countries' constitutions are going to be those colonial laws.
We know there are an infinite amount of circumstances that would lead to a murder.
I have a great idea and I have a great concept, but until it's actually expressed, it does not become intellectual property.
Accomplishments or targets of a forensic accountant is to quantify what may have been lost.
We believe in different criminals and we manipulated the law and we exploited the system.
A responsible journalist will reach out to the person who they have the information on for a comment.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance he's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue, well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
The fluid retention occurs in the lungs and they get short of breath, particularly with exertion. And there's a particularly condition where when lying down, they feel short of breath and have to use a lot of pillows. That's a sign that the shortness of breath might be due to heart failure.
Pastor J, I want to get a tattoo.
You really want
Respond to me. Respond to me how you would respond to me.
The first question I'll ask is why?
Controversial taboo topics.
We get so consumed by church, we forget that we have to live the life of being a Christian outside of the Sunday.
Like you say,
services.
we think going to a service makes us a Christian.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. So here we are about to hear the second time Pastor J wanted to take a tattoo.
Would have been late last year and early this year.
Oh gosh.
Hope Unfiltered podcast with Pastor J and Ren.
The home of Caribbean content is growing, and we welcome you to be a part of the #1 platform for young personalities who are driven to make a positive impact in society. As we continue to reach every corner of Trinidad and Tobago through our daily broadcasts, our social media pages, or through our 75+ digital billboards across the nation, contact us to learn about our competitive rates via marketing at wesncc.com or call us at 628-5835. WESN Content Capital, television with a difference.
And we're back here and talking about the WSND Content Capital, and I guess all of the stuff that's happening, it's good to have a national security, disaster management, experienced, former, soon-to-be police officer joining us every week. And of course, I'm speaking of Ashraf Ali. Morning once again.
Morning, Sean. How is Sir Haran dust?
I guess that's why I had a sneezing fit this morning.
Yeah, so it is bad, it is bad.
Actually, just an aside, I remember during COVID, of course, you know, lockdowns and you're in the house. I can't remember why I left my house, but it was early on. Could have been because I had to do a show. I did a show for Harvey Boris on his program on another station, right? So it was very eerie driving to a studio, like, am I supposed to even be doing this? I am not sure, right? I guess the roads were just clear of everything. I didn't even see police. Like, I didn't see a rat. I didn't see a cat. I didn't see a bird. And it was just one of those things where it hit me. I haven't been outside in so long. I couldn't help but feel as though some contaminant, you know, pollen, Sahara dust, whatever, was just like assaulting me, and I wasn't ready for it because it was in a way that, you know, day to day you'll get some exposure, but it was in a way that, like, my body was like, hey, I'm not used to this anymore. You need to give me a second, right?
The reason why I mentioned Saharan dust is because post-Carnival, we had issues with Saharan dust. The irony is that Carnival was, after Carnival, everybody didn't acknowledge and wait, the Saharan dust is so thick and so heavy. But during Carnival, nobody's concerned.
I know, right?
So between that little period of Carnival, you realize that nobody's concerned about anything else.
But also, note too, we ain't even reached March yet. They have times when Carnival is in March, so think about it. Like, it might be even worse in years gone by.
Yes. So I'm just bring that to show that how we view things in Trinidad, how we could be how we could be distracted with certain things so fast and have our concentration on certain things. So Carnival take away everything. All of a sudden, Carnival finished. We had some of the issues with some violent crimes taking place.
Yes.
We have the environmental issues taking place. We have the issue with, the most prominent one right now is the CARICOM issues, and there are a lot of comments and conversation about what transpired in CARICOM.
So, yeah, let's go into that. That's what I wanted to just get your take on first. Some of it is regional security issues, but what was your general take on it? Because you're kind of seeing now, communication-wise, I appreciated the Prime Minister. Some people might not agree with this, obviously the opposition doesn't. But compared to some of her public utterances on some of these topics last year, she was a bit more constrained and controlled this year, but it was still, to some extent, confrontational, speaking of some of the topics that she did directly to the other leaders. So what did you make of it?
So my personal view is that I listened to the statement, how it was brought across, and the manner in how it was brought across. I don't see an issue in terms of disrespecting CARICOM, right? Now, I am not a expert in geopolitical issues and how it affects, because I don't know the run-ins of these statements. But for me personally, I thought the statement was real. And the reason why I'm saying this, sometimes I listen to Prime Minister Mia Mottley.
Yeah.
When she speaks real sometimes.
Right. It's not always nice.
No. I remember a particular incident when she went to the UN and how she spoke at the UN. And I said to myself, that is how our CARICOM leaders, that is how one of our, I'm proud of how she spoke from a Caribbean perspective. She was forceful. She was forceful in that context.
Well, I'm glad you brought it up, because one of the things that I've come to realize is I have some clear disagreements ideologically with Mia Mottley with some of these issues. That doesn't mean that I don't like her or I don't respect her.
Exactly. So that is why I brought up the UN. One of the I can't remember the exact. I think it was we're speaking about climate thing. Climate change.
I think it was climate change.
Climate change.
Yes.
And the way she spoke and how she brought across the concerns that she brought across the concerns, she actually told some countries that they are not doing enough for the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Right? It came across like that. It could have been said that she was too harsh. I'm just saying speculation. It could have been said that she could be asked to be. It was too harsh. She was too enforcing. But at the end of the day, we all may not agree with everything that she said, but she said. She said it.
In your opinion, because to me, because of how she carries herself, she has now license, and also she knows how far to go.
Yes.
And how far to go in this case means yes, I could go far with the content of my message, but I'm still not necessarily going to go far saying, oh, here's our wajang, so and so, blah, 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 and shop talk the people in the UN, right?
Yes.
And start to throw all kind of personal insults. Donald, yes, orange, right? Trudeau, you're too French. I don't know, like, you know, Macron, you clean up your own house. Like, she's not going that far.
I must say, so she has some
right or leeway?
Not leeway. Some repetition in terms of how she's speaking.
Political capital?
Yes, in that aspect of it. On the other hand, the situation with our Prime Minister, post the CARICOM conference, there was a lot of narratives, a lot of things were said because she was in the opposition at the same time. So things were said via opposition and everything like that. No, but she's the Prime Minister. Taking that aside, with all of that, how she carried about herself on this occasion at the CARICOM, I did not see her the way that, I didn't see that the statement or the manner in which she expressed the concerns that she has and how she voiced her opinion in the interest of Trinidad and Tobago disrespected CARICOM on the whole.
One of the interesting things is she utilized some of the messages from some of the previous speakers, most notably Andrew Holness,
Yes.
Prime Minister of Jamaica, when he said, you know, we all have our different paths, or we all have our different, you know, we have the same goal, right? But how we get there is not going to be the same.
And that might be the harsh reality that we may have to face in the Caribbean at this point in time, because we all cannot be operating on the same principles, because we have different political and international agendas to address.
So historically, a lot of times societies don't want to address security concerns until something goes wrong.
Right.
Similar to disaster management,
Yes.
right? We want to say, it's fine, we don't need a Port of Spain evacuation plan until you get a disaster bad enough, and then you're going to have a lot of finger pointing, right?
True.
Now, with regards to regional crime, one of the things the Prime Minister brought up, and listen, it's not as though she is the be-all and end-all authority of it, but at the very least, it's an interesting talking point. We have different security concerns as some of the other islands. Their violence level was rising, but it's not the same, right? And the reason why I bring that up is, I don't know if you've been following what happened recently in Mexico when they went after the cartel leader, and how not only part of the reporting is the level of violence with the reprisal killings against police officers, but also some of the context provided with the level of organized crime violence for just about anything. I was shocked, but on some level, partially not surprised, when one commentator was describing incidents where cartel enforcers were attacking Mexican national government officials with M2 Browning 50 caliber machine guns, killing his bodyguard services, you know, ripping through his armored vehicles. Like, that level of firepower, we haven't reached that here yet. We have had a 50 caliber sniper rifle being confiscated, right? But one of the other things that came out of the discussion is how it's not just drugs anymore.
No, it's not.
Now it's oil and gas. And not only are we a perfect expansion ground for that level of cartel operations, but the financial diversification of the illegal activities can also be done here in both Trinidad and Tobago and Guyana. And in my mind, while CARICOM leaders want to debate the semantics of this is a zone of peace, right? And some people want to say, well, you know, domestic crime, that's not what we talk about when we say zone of peace. The flip side is, it's military level violence being done by Mexican domestic crime. From what I understand, special forces went after the cartel leader, not police, SWAT teams, right? So at what point are we kind of limiting ourselves to, well, crime is domestic and military is international and not the same thing? It's like, that's military weapons, military tactics, military training being used by the cartel in Mexico.
And that's why we must face the reality. For the last couple of years, we have been saying that way and the way crime has been developing. 2024, we had the highest amount of murders, right? Almost 40-something% from the statistical data was gang-related, right? Gang violence. It was suppressed for some time because of some of the measures, and the measures was not because of any specific policing techniques, right? It was because we are in a state of emergencies, right? Yes, everything, well, and plus we had elections, we had a lot of things. So there was a lot of law enforcement personnel in and around with certain aspects of it. Fair enough, that no matter what measure that was put in place, once you have a decrease in the number of persons losing their lives, we will take that, right? It's not an issue. I'm not fighting about how it happened, but lives were saved. 2026, you realize that we are almost 59 murders already.
And
right?
we have a lot of multiple casualties.
We are going back.
Incidents.
We are going back to the area where we have a lot of shootings, multiple casualties taking place, multiple fatalities.
Am I correct to assume last year it seemed as though a lot of the murders were done with pistols?
Right now,
and now they pulled the rifles out of the weapon caches.
So we have now a lot of high-powered rifles using again. It was already there, but it's now being repeated. Are we going to see measures put in place to curb these levels of violence that is now starting to rear its head again? Are we going to wait until 2026, at the end of 2026 or the middle of 2026, to realize that we are now going way beyond and our trajectory is going to go beyond that? Are we going to start to put real measures in place? And the real measures may be what we are trying to avoid, where law-abiding citizens will have to be affected.
Okay, right.
Well, and we have to be given up, and I'm saying, as citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, to be a law-abiding citizen in a society that is becoming, that is fast becoming a lot, there's a lot of lawlessness, you have to give up some of your rights for law enforcement. You have to give up some of your rights. And some of your rights, you have to be inconvenienced because the individuals who are beyond the law, who don't want to operate within the law, they have nothing to give up.
So would you say that there's some merit to what the minister said, that the social legislation was a missed opportunity?
It was.
With regards to the murders?
And I am saying, from my personal perspective, I saw the value in how the SOSO's legislation would have been utilized. However, it was made too political in my view. There were some changes that could have been negotiated on both sides, but that's for the administration to determine whether or not going forward they would want to do it.
Well, I'm under the impression that they didn't even need to entertain the opposition senators. They just needed to get enough independent senators to pass it.
I am still saying, as citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, this type of legislation that you're going to want to put in place, you should get some support. Mm-hmm. And the support is that if the opposition doesn't support it and the independents support it, even the opposition is asking for some additional measures, additional changes towards it. Because it will affect every citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, directly or indirectly. And I'm not looking at it from the perspective of any political party perspective. This legislation is going to affect all of us in some way or the other. And
it might not be enough for it to squeak by with the minimal amount of votes. You want as much support as possible.
So if it could squeak by it, you don't need the minimal. That is not the issue. That is just for administrative purposes. But for holistical buying of this type of legislation, I still believe that you should have parliament support, right? And when I say the government support in this context is the government, the entire parliament is in support of it. Yes, you could have objections towards it, right? But you have to look at the bigger picture. This would have given us, Trinidad and Tobago, there are citizens who want it and can't come out and ask for it. Just like there are persons who just don't want it because they know it will affect their level of mobility and to commit crimes.
Well, fair enough. I guess part of the problem is when you want to get buy-in, because you want buy-in from the population as well, right? Otherwise, eventually, this might be a measure that could be so unpopular it could collapse a government depending on how it's implemented, right?
So true.
It's so critical, as you say. But I guess the issue is, it's kind of hard when you have political division and low trust and confidence in the government, the system, and law enforcement to then say, we're going to suspend some rights now.
And when it comes to law enforcement, there will always be persons, when you look at it, trust and confidence. Trust and confidence in an organization like law enforcement agencies is very subjective.
Yes. Well, you're not going to have 100%. No one will ever have anything, 100%.
The best you can hope for, right, is between 50 to 60% might be ideal, right? Because law enforcement restricts the rights of citizens who want to go beyond the parameters of the law. If you are determined to be outside of the law, you do not want to be ruled in back.
Yeah.
Right? And you will always have kickback against it.
Well, one of the things that also came up in the 50th meeting that day, and I think this is one of those examples where for a lot of citizens, they're like, why are we being held to higher standards than the people in authority? Shouldn't it be the other way around? Because the Prime Minister brought up, and I wasn't expecting this, and I am to some extent happy that it did bring it up, because to me, the lack of resolution in the Brent Thomas situation is what bothers me the most. It's not somebody has to be guilty so someone has to pay. I just want a resolution, right? And we don't have it. That's my issue. She described it as a kidnapping. The Prime Minister of Barbados says, no, it wasn't a kidnapping. It's a complex issue that involves two countries and CARICOM's regional security. What was your take on it? Because we said so much about it off air.
I don't want to use the term kidnapping and argue the semantics of kidnapping, right? Because we could debate the context of kidnapping and what it speaks to in law and how it appears. Prime Minister of Barbados said it's not a kidnapping. I could understand the context in which their government would have addressed it. I could understand the context in which our government addressed the issue of kidnapping, because there was, in fact, the quote-unquote illegal removal of a citizen from a country to another under the disguise of utilizing state resources. If we want to say that this forms within the forms within the context of what a kidnapping, this is a high-profile kidnapping.
Because it's not like there's a different term or circumstance that could apply.
I can't use another word, and I had to revert back to the word kidnapping, because for just recently, an individual, a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, was kidnapped, carried to Venezuela.
Yes.
And ransom was asked for the individual. If that is basically kidnapping, that is basically what kidnapping is about. The arguments of the legal ramifications would be argued in terms of who had legal authority and what was the documentation, all of that. The reason why we have this issue about the word kidnapping is because there is no clarity since that incident as to the circumstances that surrounded and why this happened, because up to now, we have not found out who gave the authority, under what grounds that the individual was, what was the documentation issued, who authorized the use of these type of assets that cannot be utilized by local law enforcement to go to another jurisdiction. There had to be authorization to enter somebody else's jurisdiction and to remove...
Which is why I say it's hard for me to accept. I understand that she has to say it on some level, whatever the procedure is, but it's hard for me to accept that it was not a kidnapping and Barbados was not involved in a very practical, informal use of language.
To use the word kidnapping, there's no other way that we can
Because it's not like the difference between a mass casualty violence event, right? Like the Las Vegas shooting, however many years ago, where it was just like one random idiot with a set of guns in a hotel room, right? A lot of people said that's terrorism because it caused terror. And I'm like, well, no, that's technically what terrorism is. But terrorism has a complex definition,
Exactly.
right? Kidnapping, the crime of kidnapping doesn't. The crime of kidnapping does not say if you are illegally detained and a ransom is demanded and this. And there's not a lot of that.
So
it just comes back down to you're held against your will.
Exactly, and that is the context in which kidnapping, the ingredients, some of the ingredients to prove kidnapping, it was held against the will. Now, whether it was held against the will lawfully or otherwise, when I say lawfully, they had the legal authority to detain the individual in Barbados based on the advice of or the directives of another law enforcement agency. The issue would have been, the issue now is that when you found out afterwards that, listen, we didn't act in the manner that we were supposed to act because there was some discrepancy in the documentation or the circumstances in which...
Right, you pointed out two things. One, there was nothing to actually charge him with, apparently.
Well, no, but the thing about it is that if you are extraditing an individual to a country, you would have committed an offense within that country. I am still here to find out what was the offense that Brent Thomas committed in Trinidad and Tobago.
Right, if you're not following, he was extradited to Trinidad and Tobago. So Trinidad and Tobago needed a charge to say he has to come back.
He has not been charged for anything as yet?
Now, just by the way, I don't know to what extent have you considered this. Brent Thomas, an arms dealer, for whatever reason, the police executive and the Cabinet National Security Council, they had an issue with FULs and ammunition and whatever. And it started with Guy Griffith and the merit list and that whole fiasco. And then Brent Thomas comes along and they arrest him, but they can't even charge him. Now, cut to Commissioner of Police. Whole rigmarole about sniper rifle authorization. Arrested, tried multiple times. Hey, DPP, can we charge?
In the public
DPP says no each time. It's another issue that is a firearm issue, right? We also technically had the SSA situation as well. But it seems as though I'm just seeing a pattern here of for whatever the agenda was to try to deal with FULs, right? The then government of the day was more than willing to kind of like try to, there has to be a crime here somewhere, arrest them, like circumvent or shortcut. Because I don't understand it, because I don't even understand what the goal was when the vast majority of the violence, yes, I know there's Defense Force ammunition out there at times, but the vast majority of the firearms seemingly are smuggled in, and the vast majority of the ammunition, yes, it might be sold. I doubt it's from the authorized dealers, right? But it might be sold from local sources, but the vast majority also seems to be smuggled in. The illegal stuff is the bigger problem, and yet they were targeting the legal stuff. I don't understand, and they never were able to explain it to us, not even give us a working theory.
And that is some of the issues that I think over the years, we have a phobia, and we still have a phobia of firearms for personal use as opposed to criminals using firearms. You hear a lot of narratives and a lot of speculation and conspiracies that if an individual who is a FUL holder, what he or she will do with the licensed firearm, what he or she, how they go behave with it, and what is the risk associated with it. And let's be realistic. As a FUL holder, it is not as simple as what you're saying.
Yeah.
You have more restrictions than the ones who have illegal firearms. The issue right now is the illegal firearms that we have out there that is being brandishing, being used, and high-power weapons have been used to commit crimes, violent crimes, and violent crimes, robberies, home invasions, you name it, it has been used in that aspect of it.
Yeah.
Is those type of so is illegal firearm is the issue, not legal firearms. legal firearms are, so what is the issue with legal firearms? Is it because you have personal views? We still have a personal view that only certain people should have firearms, only persons of a certain type of caliber supposed to have status in society, supposed to have firearms. Is these firearm users, legitimate firearm users, are the ones who committing robberies, are the ones who committing offenses? Or,
yeah, because
come on.
Street crime, if they want a gun, they could get a gun, not so?
Exactly.
And then for everyday, because I guess some people might think, well, what if there's a domestic situation? As far as I'm aware, a lack of firearms is not stopping someone from committing a murder in some sort of domestic situation.
And this is where I'm saying. So I listen to a lot of persons make comments about even law enforcement personnel. I am very upset that law enforcement personnel, right, personally. Mm-hmm. And I had some, let me leave it there.
Just by the side, this is the unfortunate consequence for all of the other officers of the action of some officers. And this is why I'm like, the union needs to not try to play these politically correct
law
games.
Enforcement personnel in this current environment that we have, the current environment that we face in society, you cannot tell law enforcement personnel that you cannot be armed, right? You cannot have a firearm to protect yourself and your family, because it's about protection of yourself and family.
Yeah, there was at least one police officer, one WPC in recent times, she got killed outside the house, right?
Exactly. So you are dealing with criminal elements. You are treating with criminal elements on a daily basis, some more than the other, where you are inhibiting, restricting, and trying to curtail those individuals from committing and carrying out their criminal activities. You are stopping them from earning their monies, right? Illegally, right? They would kick against it. They would try all means necessary to stop you from doing your job.
Well, Mexico is the example.
So are we going to wait till when the criminal network, and remember, our SOEs was based on criminal enterprises that were developing, and joint enterprises,
syndicates,
and syndicates that was developing. Are we sure at this point in time, as we sit here today, are we sure, are we 100% confident that the syndicates and the organization has been dismantled, is no longer, or just remaining dormant until they have the opportunity to start?
I think at the risk of maybe revealing things, I don't know to what extent this is revealing something. I'm of the opinion that our security for politicians, for elected officials, it's not enough against a determined threat. That's why when they call that SOE, I'm like, I'm fine for this SOE, because this is just one of those things where I have a great fear, and it's not about if I like the politician or not, if I'm going to have this fear, right? Because this is one of those things you can't unring this bell once it happens once.
So Sean, I would say I have no issue, and if the administration asks for another SOE, on this occasion, I think that SOE needs to come with a curfew. We need to have stricter measures put in place.
But will the public accept it?
Whether they accept it or not, sometimes you don't know what is the best way.
I think the problem is it will reach a point now where it might come across as political. And ironically, how they handle the ZOSO legislation is not going to help that situation. It gives a lot more ammunition for the opposition to claim it as political, whether it is or not. But it's kind of regardless at this point.
But we are seeing a particular, I cannot say a trend, I can't say a trend, but historically, these are, if you compare some of the things, some of the situations in 2024 and over the years, these type of multiple shootings, those are patterns that once you talk about start to have gang violence, rearing its head again, it only could get worse.
Because it's the level of callousness at some point, because you've spoken about the escalations.
Yes.
Right? Well, you all shot 3 people in the street. we'll shoot up a whole car, we'll shoot up a whole block. And at some point, someone is going to get a really dumb idea. And I know that throughout the years of you being on Talking Point, off air, you'll be like, nah, they're not going to do that. Somebody's going to get a really dumb idea. Oh, this politician helping you? You think we can't touch him?
And the thing about it is that when you have, whether persons want to accept it or not, the criminal elements in Trinidad and Tobago and networks with criminal elements across the region, they also look at how they behave and manipulate, or should say not manipulate, adapt some of their measures.
Because one of the things, to wrap this up, something to consider. I did remember gun violence being on the rise in other parts of the Caribbean. Obviously not to the same level as here, but their local police forces, their leadership was now starting to be concerned. Kind of like what happened in Tobago, almost, right? And I wonder if, to some extent, well, I'm not saying that the Prime Minister is this saint/prophet who is anticipating problems down the road and trying to save CARICOM from itself, right? I think she's doing what she thinks she has to do for TNT, but the conversation has an implication of, is the region sure everything is going to remain copacetic? Or what is the risk of this violence as we already started being imported or migrating up the islands, that the worse it gets here, the wider that door gets opened further up the road, and it gets worse up there, because at some point, if the illegal guns flow too much like water here, they're going to be like, well, we saturated the market, so we need to find other markets.
Other markets may become one of our Caribbean neighbors, and could be.
It already probably has.
Right, but the extent to which, and that is how it works. Little by little, you see things taking place. We have a situation that we need to get control over. The measures that we take may be drastic measures that we may have to take in a very short term, and because we can't use drastic measures over long term, because if you use drastic measures over long term, it means that you lost the fight. So those are measures that have to be dealt with in short term, and I am not saying it could happen. I am not saying it may or may not happen, but I still believe that there is room for that ZOZO's legislation to be brought back into Parliament.
No, I think there's somewhat of an expectation at the next possible opportunity.
And I am hoping that good sense will prevail, in that they can have some dialogue into addressing some of the concerns on both sides, because it has value. And if persons really understand the value which it is not about the value of restricted movement alone. It's built into the legislation. It's about development of a community, changing the mindset over a period of time. It is not going to happen today or tomorrow. There's a social program in part of it.
I think there's two issues. One, I honestly think they were band-aiding a different situation, or the problem as they perceived it.
Yeah.
Because you said we tried to implement your ZOZO legislation, and I'm like, time out, we're not Jamaica. You know, like on some level, I don't think it works that well if you just outright copy and paste someone else's homework. But according to some people, that's what it seemed like, and it makes me wonder. You know, the concept is fine. I don't have an issue with the concept per se. My issue is all the stuff that is either directly or indirectly involved with the implementation or necessary to support things like the ZOZOs. So one is accountability of law enforcement, and that is actually in some ways more a political problem than a police problem, right? And then one of the other things, of course, is just like even the courts. If you have a ZOZO legislation and you start to arrest people and the courts take year long, like police discipline is affected by the courts.
So that is what I'm saying. There is value in it, and sometimes we say cut and paste. It is not always practicable or feasible to say that I'm going to sometimes when you bring a system in place, you have to take the whole system to see how the whole system is going to work, right? You may have to tweak it going down later. So I agree with what you're saying. It appears that we just cut and paste and we just want to use everything from Jamaica. We have a different dynamics.
And also the social programs, I don't know.
We always have we had an issue with our social. We already have issues with our social program. So to get in buy-in, but like I said, I am still hopeful that there is value in it, because look right now. Guyana is moving towards demerit point systems for vehicle infractions. There was a value in it. How it was applied in Trinidad and Tobago was an issue.
Honestly, I think you don't need excessive penalties. So you just need a penalty that is something that most citizens can't just brush off, right? It needs to be severe enough. But really what you need is enough measures of enforcement, the breathalyzers and the what have yous, and then some reasonable methodology to shut down the groups to say, hey, there's a roadblock here.
Yeah.
Avoid this spot. You know what I mean?
But so when you are implementing systems that have been tried and tested across different jurisdictions, you may want to bring you will bring it, and you will have to now tweak it for your society. I am not saying what was the intention of the government. I don't know what the intention of the government was, because I'm not part and parcel of the discussions. But I am simply saying that from a realistic perspective, and someone who always speaks about putting in systems in place, we bring the system, we test it, and if it is need to be a readjustments in the system, because you must have monitoring and evaluation of that whole legislation. It cannot be just made into law, because the nature of that legislation has to have a strict monitoring evaluation component in it.
That's where I feel we'll really fall down.
And we always have problems with monitoring evaluation of
just about everything.
With a lot of different systems. And that system itself needs some, because you have to have review after a particular period to see, you may not get the full results, but you need to know, listen.
So how to adjust?
We need to adjust some of the mechanisms in place. So I am hopeful. I just simply say I'm hopeful, because I am seeing the value in that and the way it is structured, because there is need to curb some of these type and change some of the mindset and bring some persons who are actually in societies, who are under duress in societies and cannot speak out, that they may be silently asking for some assistance.
Now, concerns that, yes, the SOE ended, but also the forward is in the Middle East now. The American presence is gone, and seemingly the marijuana is amongst other things, one would expect, have reasonable suspicions. The marijuana is flowing again, right? So much so that I don't know. It's kind of interesting. The marijuana seemingly is now coming from Latin America once again to South America, but also disappearing in police lockups. You would have thought when the smuggling was being interdicted, that was the time to be like, get alternative sources of marijuana.
So when you have reports of this nature, it does not augur well for trust and confidence in the organization. It just continually erodes the trust and confidence.
But again, it doesn't have to be the whole station.
No, it does not.
It just needs to be, well, I don't know if it's easy for one officer, but it could be limited to just one officer.
And there lies the challenge you face. The last incident that happened in the Baratara police station, and someone was arrested. Follow-ups, nobody knows about it. Nobody hears what is the situation with respect to it, which I am saying. Incidents of that nature where it has a direct impact in the trust and confidence of the organization, especially when it comes to investigating your own, which has been a conversation most recently, and has always been a conversation whether the organization can investigate their own. We have some issues with that, right? This is another incident, and it also brings to the question with respect to who is guarding the guards.
But beyond that, though, I actually wanted to go just let's speak on the first part just a little bit, and then there's one other thing I want to ask your opinion on. We don't have an SOE, we don't have an election, we don't have Carnival, we don't have the Americans. All of the things that were keeping crime down last year, throughout the year, in one form or another, and at the beginning of this year, it's now all gone.
Right.
I guess now is the time where, unless we see something put in place, some kind of plan, is there any hope that the murder rate is going to stay sub 400, or is it just a matter of time?
Well, that is a very interesting question. That's a predictive question. It depends on what measures that the police executive has planned, what systems they need to put in place to address these concerns. Based on the last number of the last incidents that we have multiple murders. If you take that, and I am being very conservative in my projection, that is not a good projection right now.
Right.
Because coming out of that,
just the last week,
it's not a good projection.
That is true.
Not a good projection. And if you start to see multiple murders, shootings, and especially how that one occur.
Basically, if the average goes to 2 a day a week, we're back to where we started.
Yeah, exactly, and that is not where we want to go.
We have Sanford on the line. Caller, good morning, you're on here.
Good morning, Sean. Good morning, Mr. Ali.
Good morning, sir.
I listened to you, Sean, for this is the third day. And I have some differences with your opinion, but I'm not going to get into that. I want to get into what you were talking about today with respect to criminality and crime in Trinidad and Tobago. And let me say this. We have been doing the same thing over and over and over again. There's nothing different happening. Dina, what you call it?
Dina
Sitahal?
Yeah.
People who charged with Dina Sitahal murder, they're still in jail, right? They haven't been brought to court as yet. There's an issue in Trinidad and Tobago, and I don't know if you're. Let me jog your mathematical memory. When you're doing advance and you have intersection, we need to draw the circles. Normally, intersection you would have 3 circles, but in this instance, with our crime, we have to look at it as a mathematical problem. We have 1 circle, is the government. We have another circle, which is law enforcement, that is the police, the army, and the Coast Guard. We have another circle, which is the criminal element. And then we have another circle, which I would call the business sector in Trinidad and Tobago. And we have another circle, which is the judiciary. And where those intersect with one another is where we have the problems in Trinidad and Tobago. And we need to fix the problems within the intersections of those 5 circles. And we can't seem to do that, because there is enough pushback in each one of those separate circles that would cause other parts not to want to push back against it. The intermingling of all those elements for negative, what I would call negative connotations is what is the problem in Trinidad and Tobago. That's what is the problem in Trinidad and Tobago. All the good that we have in each one of those are afraid to, well, except the criminal element, are afraid to push back against the bad in the same circle. And I seriously mean push back against them. In law enforcement, all the good in law enforcement are afraid to push back against the bad in law enforcement. All the good with politicians against are afraid to push back against the bad. Same thing in the judiciary. Same thing, and this is our problem. This is our problem. That's why the drugs never stop. Let me say this to you, Sean. the drugs never stop coming in. The drugs never stop coming in, even though America was blowing up boats. It never stopped coming in.
True.
Slow down.
All this
other means
foolish talk about there was a scarcity of drugs and the price went up. It's rubbish. Those of us who know. Criminal activity in Trinidad and Tobago, somehow we need a few people in all those areas to rise and say, enough is enough. Enough is enough. Because they're not hearing the public. They're not hearing the public. Enough is enough. Have a good day, gentlemen.
Thank you for that. I mean, that's why I said, with regards to police, I like teachers and doctors in the public sector, I don't know if the average rank and file officer could speak out on certain things, not even the media ambassadors. The workaround to that, the limited workaround we have in our society is the union. But at times, the union seems to want to play ball and not necessarily be a voice for the members who, and there are a lot of them, have legitimate issues of why do we look so bad? Why do we look so bad? Because like what Edie Stewart said with regards to some nurses, the bad officers are holding the good officers hostage. And it's crazy because only the biggest of conspiracy theorists are going to say the majority of police officers are corrupt. Yeah. It's not the majority, it's the minority. And it might be such a small minority to be shocking, because it doesn't have to be a lot of police officers to cause damage to the system. And if it's a minority, now the question is, why is it being allowed to persist? Yes, you might get the low-level stuff. And yes, it's not just a question of the police service.
I remember this particular topic, corruption, and when I had to deal with it in my academic circle. Corruption only can be, you only could have a corrupt act if there's both parties. Right? It's simply like a bribe. Where people say people just take bribe. If I offer you a bribe, if there's no acceptance, there's no bribe.
Yeah.
So if it's not facilitator of a bribe, right, then there's no bribe. But we in a society, so in a realistic perspective, Trinidad and Tobago society is comfortable. A vast majority of those persons are comfortable in circumventing the rules to get things done.
Yes.
That is
so here's my question.
Corruption.
And you could speak to your experience as a senior but still mid-level officer, right? As well as whatever other life experience you have. Do you think we are a society of efficient and effective problem solvers?
No, we are not.
And then now, it might just be that it started here with what might seem to be one of the most benign forms of corruption that we have in this country, but one that we all know exists.
Yeah.
When you go to get your driver's license, you not just go in and getting your driver's license, right? And it seems, well, what's the harm? What's the harm, right? And nobody bothers with it.
And
but it starts you getting used to the, I need to put on the table to cut through the red tape.
We pay, we facilitate, I don't want to use it pay, that might cause problems.
Yeah.
We facilitate
something.
Right? All right? We facilitate to get public servants or other, to do what they are actually paid to do.
Yeah, it's a gift.
Right?
I'm giving them a gift.
So yes, in that circumstance, as you discussed this thing with licensing over the year, for the last number of years, you are already hearing the issue.
It's still there.
As much as the Transport Commissioner is trying to get that thing, he still has that issue to deal with. Because why? It's part and part of our system, how we operate within our system. Everything is about, if you give me a little extra,
yeah,
or you try to buy my services, I could facilitate something else for you. And all it's simply saying, all you're doing is to you are paying for that person to do what they are paid to do.
Yes.
That's all you're doing.
So, I mean, you have heard we're not a place with ease of doing business, correct?
Yes.
French-Senegalese businesswoman Margaret Wade vehemently believes Africa's corruption is caused by the bureaucracy, by the over-regulation. And I guess part of it is it goes hand in hand in when you don't manage the regulation efficiently.
Yeah.
When it's just so slow and sluggish, and you're like, but I need this thing done today because the economy don't wait for nobody, right?
Yeah.
So I wonder if that is something to look at. I don't necessarily think that's going to solve all corruption, but you know, there's other things as well. Part of it is if you abuse the police service, some of them don't intend to be corrupt, but they might, cynicism has a way of turning good people into bad. Cynicism and enough negative things being inflicted upon them.
So we have a lot to address why we are at this stage when it comes to the perception of everybody is corrupt.
Yeah, there is that perception.
It might simply be we are fed up of the bureaucracy. To circumvent the bureaucracy, we're sacrificing.
That's where it starts.
And we are sacrificing integrity to get the job done. And somebody, a person, so here's what. Friends and families don't feel that they are doing anything wrong assisting friends and families.
Of course.
Because they are assisting friends and families. Extrapolate friends and families across the board. So it means that everybody, friends and families, are doing things for them with friends and families. Then it's not considered corrupt. It's not considered to be doing anything wrong.
Well, not just that. I think when you add that to the actual under the table stuff to get the ball rolling, one of the reasons why some of these systems are so inefficient is because the line keeps getting juggled.
Yep.
With all of that. But let's end that there. Ironically, at a time period where I think the political communication has been the most mature, we're still pointing to issues of, I guess you could say, immaturity. I don't know. I have a theory. The post-World War II generation was not just the greatest generation for the Allies. It might have been the greatest generation for a lot of the world. And the world was better off for it because they faced harsh lessons of World War I into the Great Depression into World War II. And now we have a generation of people who suck because they haven't had the same level of challenge, you know. COVID was the closest thing to some kind of global challenge. And I don't know if we handle that all that well, to be honest. But thanks for joining me once again.
No
Thanks to Mr. Sanfan and calling. I'll just end with this. I did want to speak to Asra about this, but we're out of time. There's an article with regards to underage suicides within the last 2 years. 22 children either died or attempted to do so. And I have a friend of mine that's in the NPTA, and he is part of, I guess, the response to some of these things. This is something that I would just want to put out there. Parents, you need to keep an eye on your kids, especially your male children, because I do fear that modern society, we have lost ways on how to engage with a lot of our boy children who do not conform to the current norms or what's currently available, right? Even myself, I fully understand when the article says a lot of males want to bottle up their emotions. They think that they can't ask for help. Because I felt like that in school a lot of the times. It never reached to this point.
And I know we're very close to closing on this. That conversation that I think needs to be discussed a little more. But one of the things that we have to look at is that it is not about parents alone keeping an eye out, because sometimes you keep an eye, but you're not seeing.
Yeah.
It's more about, it's all about actually knowing your child. And the only way you can know your child is if you are willing to have conversations with your children, and sometimes the hard conversations in terms of having a conversation, not being friends, but conversation, because there are things that you may observe and you just don't want it. And sometimes we make statements about children that they behave this way and that way. And we always give them examples. When I was this age, I was doing X, Y, and Z. When you were there, you may not have had the challenges that they are facing right now. It's a different challenge, so you have to give them a little space sometimes.
Well, not just that. I just want to put this out there, and it might seem obvious, but to close, you can't replace parenting with this.
So true.
Right? And you can't replace parental engagement and guidance with this. But to say that there's an easy answer, parenting was never easy, and now it's just our experiences are not going to directly translate to our children's experiences. I don't have kids, but I do have nephews. With that said, folks, stay safe. Remember your allegiance to the Republic and to each other. Don't forget, it's nice to be nice. Harken back to the 90s. Maybe we do need the old-time days. But until then, we'll see you next week. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
WESN.
If these walls could talk, they'd cry uncle. They didn't plan to become offices or yoga studios, but they've stood by us, even when we got a little stir-crazy. For that, they deserve some thanks. They deserve Benjamin Moore.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
The home of Caribbean content is growing, and we welcome you to be a part of the #1 platform for young personalities who are driven to make a positive impact in society. As we continue to reach every corner of Trinidad and Tobago through our daily broadcasts, our social media pages, or through our 75+ digital billboards across the nation, contact us to learn about our competitive rates via marketing@wesncc.com or call us at